President of the Fiji Australia Business Council is Veera Chud, His Excellency John Williams, Acting High Commissioner to Fiji, members of the Fiji Australia Business Council, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida, ladies and gentlemen. I'm deeply pleased and honored to be present here this morning. I remember speaking to Fiji Australia Business Council sometime 13 years ago. And so I'm pleased to be back to speak to all of you. Fiji-Australia partnership is a very strong one. And it's a great partnership. The people-to-people link is extremely deep. Australia is home to thousands of former Fijians. Every year, more than 3,000 Australians visit Fiji. In fact, it was 367,000 in 2019. We're both sports-loving countries, and we both share human resources from each other. We probably share more than the Australians share with us. Economic relations. Australia, as you all know, is the largest source market for our tourism industry, more than 40%. Australia is also our largest trading partner, 1.2 billion in exports and imports. In addition to that, Australia is a key source of personal remittances, over $300 million a year. And in fact, remittances over the last 3 years, in 2020, 2021 put together, we had about $1.5 billion coming into Fiji. In 2022, it's more than $800 million. Put together for the last 3 years, it's more than $2.3 billion. And I think we all know that that was very, very important in keeping our economy going. Support by Australia during the COVID pandemic. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the Australian government and the Australian people for their support during COVID. Australia provided over 1 million doses of vaccines, close to $300 million in budget support, which was critical. Australia's support in accessing concessional resources from the multilateral agencies, institutions such as the ADB and the World Bank. And once our borders were open, Australia was the largest contributor to the post-COVID tourism recovery. Future partnerships. Australia offers good opportunity for Australian investments, and Fiji needs to take that opportunity, particularly in the state-owned enterprises, public-private partnerships, and private investment. Skill sharing and skill development is going to be a very, very critical issue for our economy going forward. We are in a challenging global and domestic economic environment. We have seen a prolonged spillover effect of the Ukraine-Russian war. The IMF and the World Bank have recently revised the economic growth, global economic growth, down to 1.7%. And the transmission mechanisms that follow through as a result of global economic slowdown obviously will have an impact on our economies as well. But just looking at past global crises, the one that I remember particularly clearly is the global economic crisis around 2008, 9, and 10. And at that time, Australia, New Zealand economies seemed very, very resilient. And we are hoping that with this phase, again, Australia and New Zealand would provide that buffer, that resilience that we could benefit greatly here in Fiji. That is why the new coalition government, and I can say this with a lot of conviction and commitment, we are committed to developing a stronger, much more deeper and meaningful engagement, particularly with our two important partners in the region, Australia and New Zealand. Because we believe that a deeper and more meaningful engagement would be beneficial not only in the medium term, short to medium term, but will be critical for our long-term economic sustainability. As I've said before, since we've been in government for only a month, obviously some people expect us to do everything, but we are in a very, very critical period. We are in a recovery mode. We must make sure that that recovery is sustainable, and we can only get back to pre-COVID recovery by 2024. One thing that we have learned very clearly after COVID and during COVID crisis is that we cannot put all our eggs in one basket. We believe that this is a very, very important period for us to think carefully, think critically, get our focus together, and work towards diversification of our economy. Public sector-led growth, which we probably have seen over the last several years, has a limit. And that is why private sector-led growth is extremely critical for us in the future. And therefore, we believe that the government's primary responsibility, primary focus and effort will be, and that is the philosophy of the coalition government. Our Honourable Prime Minister has shown that leadership with humility, with consultation, with dialogue, with getting people together is the best way forward for not only sustained economic growth, but also sustained inclusive development for all our people. On that front, my ministry has decided, in fact, I will be appointing very soon a 10 or 11 member fiscal review committee. And essentially, the fiscal review committee will be tasked to look at our expenditure policies, our revenue policies, and our tax policies. And that work from the Fiscal Review Committee will feed into the whole budget process. It will feed into a National Economic Summit that we plan to hold sometime in April. And I'm sure all of you will be participating in that, because we want to formulate a budget that will have no surprises. We want to have a budget that will lay the foundation for sustained future economic growth. And that is why we believe that that is the most critical aspect of policy making, and the style of government that we want to provide is going to be very different. And I've said before what that would be. I know my colleague, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida is on top of his job. There are a lot of concerns about the ease of doing business. There are a lot of bottlenecks, obstacles that we have heard from the business community, stakeholders in the last 1 month. Personally, I have, in the last 8 years, in my other role in the opposition, talked about these issues in a big way, and we are determined to work towards facilitating investment in a way that we can achieve good economic growth in the future. I want to assure you from the Ministry of Finance that we will work very, very closely with our business community, because we believe that governments don't do a lot of things right a lot of times. And that is why it is critical for government ministries such as ours to have a proper process, a well-defined pathway for consultation and dialogue. And that is why the appointment of the Fiscal Review Committee, having annual economic summits, plus using forums such as this to talk openly in a transparent and an accountable way to develop policies, so that there are no surprises from the government, there are no inconsistencies, and there is sustainability in policies that we adopt for our future. So once again, I'm very pleased to be here, and I want to wish you all a happy Australia Day. Nawalebu, thank you. Dhanyawad.